So I will use my 3 minutes of fame that I have at the beginning of this event. Hey, I'm Gregor Bransky. I'm the member for policy and press of the Innovation Council of Public Health, and I'm happy to welcome you to our July session of B3M Dialog. And we will talk about the European Union funding of free and open source software. And I hope that we will learn quite a bit from the Q&A that will follow it. A talk by Saranjit, which Isabel will moderate, and Lars will be so kind to give us an overview of what the BSI thinks about free and open source software and security in that field. And thus I'm left with one happy announcement that outside of the initial project BuntesBugBounty, the Innovationsverbund Öffentliche Gesundheit will actually start to keep on this dialogue series for another 8 episodes until next April. So there will be a surprise next month in August, as promised. And, well, then we will go for another 8 months of discussions and try to learn from various perspectives and continue the dialogue with public institutions, security researchers, and others alike. So I'll hand it over to you, Isabel, and you take it from there.
We can do so. I would be interested in hearing some more thoughts from Lars from the BSI side, and then we can start it off with the presentation.
Thanks, Isabel, and hello, everyone. Happy to having you here on behalf of the BSI. And today we are talking about the Open Source Software Strategy of the European Commission. And one goal of the strategy is named Ensure Open Source Software Security. So we are today talking about how can this effectively promoted by government actors. And for Germany, this is where the BSI comes into play on a federal level. So my name is Lars Bartsch. I'm the Deputy Head of Section for the Digital Consumer Protection. And here I'd like to introduce a short input on the general BSI position on that issue. So we are to promote information security in Germany, and meaning we strive to improve security in the wide range of operating systems and applications. And in principle, the diversity and the adaptability of software plays an important role to reduce the attack surface of monocultures and to improve the independence of manufacturers and users. So following this line, we see 3 aspects in particular. So first, the complete control to adapt software security techniques irrespective of the business model. Second, the possibility to test the software for vulnerabilities. And third, the ability to eliminate software vulnerabilities independently. So the BSI stands for a user, a promoter, and a contributor to free and open source software. But we are here also to remind the use of free and open source software does not per se guarantee a secure system. And to conclude, I'm very pleased to be with you at this event on behalf of the BSI in Germany. So I hope you enjoy, and thanks for your participation. So back to you, Isabel.
So I'm very happy to welcome Saranjit this evening. He has been working in DIGIT at the European Commission for over 5 years and is now a member of the EC-OSPO and manages open source projects with a European remit. I'm very much looking forward to your presentation on EU funding for free and open source software.
Thank you, Isabel. That's very nice of you. And thank you very much to BSI and Digital Rights Lab, iRights Lab for inviting me. I'll just say before I start that I am an external contractor, so I'm not a permanent employee of the Commission, but I think to all intents and purposes, we are all the same when we start working in the Commission. So I work in the OSPO, and allow me to share my screen, and I have a presentation for you. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. So here is the title, and I'm going to talk about three aspects today. The European Commission Open Source Program Office and our activities on cybersecurity, which is the theme of today, and that's hackathons and bug bounties, and also this project that I'm managing, FOSS, which is very relevant to the whole program. Okay, so the OSPO, even though the European Commission, the IT function of the European Commission is called DIGIT. It's the Directorate General of Technology. It's always had an open source strategy. We've been heavy users of open source for 25, 30 years. But what happened in 2020 was that we basically decided to create a European Commission open source strategy. So, and that's what we have today. It's still running, our first open source strategy. And one of the outcomes of that was to create an open source program office. And in fact, there were 10 outcomes. And the first one I just mentioned was to create an OSPO. And then you have all of these with you. I'm going to take you through most of these, except number 6 and number 8, which are pretty general. So let's go through those one by one. And this presentation obviously is available as a PDF as well, so you can browse it later. On the right-hand side, you see that there are works in progress, and one of them is complete, the elimination of legal barriers. Okay, so the creation of the OSPO. Well, that happened very quickly, and there are 4 members of the OSPO. Miguel, who's the team lead, Miguel Diaz-Blanco, Kai Helenius, who is our open source expert, Conrad, and myself, our freelance consultants who are part of that. So what we did was not only form the OSPO, but we've actually connected with other OSPOs across member states. And so over the last 3 years, we've created, or rather participated in an OSPO network. And that's been very fruitful because we were already speaking with open source, if you like, individuals or bodies, earlier. But now they're also creating their own OSPOs. And I think that's a good thing. The third bullet point on the top is joining the international OSPO network, which is called OSPO++. So that includes Canada, USA, amongst other countries, and we will expand, and also the UN. So the plan is to carry on connecting with other OSPOs and to share knowledge and resources and ideas, and so that's a successful action. Action number 2 is inner sourcing. What we mean by inner sourcing is that the code that we have, that we develop, is open and visible to other projects. shouldn't come as a surprise because historically each project developed its own code and only they could see the code. They never thought any other project would be interested. So we have a situation today where approximately 400 repositories exist at the moment, and we have around 12% of those are completely open to other projects. Now, since the strategy, the open source strategy, we drew a line in May 2021, and since then, 50% of projects are inner sourced, and the reasons why people don't open their code to other departments is it varies. Could be, for example, that they might feel that their code isn't very nice or well documented or has bugs, or well, I think the bugs are tested. But one of the key areas is that they have secrets, passwords and various other things. So this is us being transparent. I think this is a reality in most companies. Okay. So what we did was to do a hackathon, an internal hackathon, a secrets management hackathon early this year. And that was very successful. And we are constantly trying to discuss with each project about how to open the code. So this is the hackathon. And obviously it was very successful. Everybody participated. So every project did their own work. There was just a day to say, let's improve our code. And the cost of tea, coffee, premises were internally used was so marginal, but the benefits were very, very high. And so there will be further internal hackathons of removing secrets. We are using software from the HashiCorp software, and that's helping people to encrypt the passwords and various things. And already I can say to you that we have documented benefits because there was a project that was looking for to see whether anyone else had used a specific function or a particular way of doing things, and they just searched and they found it and saved them weeks of effort. And that was really, really useful. So I think there are lots of benefits there. So inner sourcing is alive and well, and we think it's going in the right direction. Now, action 3 was open sourcing. And for that, we created code.europa.eu. It was launched last year in September, and it's gone from strength to strength. So many projects have put their code onto code.europa.eu. At the moment, this is restricted to European institutions, but we are seeing a huge uptake of that, and people. It just shows the thirst to open source projects. So it's very, very positive indeed. Now, just on that issue, earlier there was a very bureaucratic and complex, procedure to get permission to open source projects, and it had to happen project by project. It could take between 3 to 6 months. And as part of the strategy, it was agreed that there would be a commission decision to remove those legal barriers. And I'm very pleased to say that in December 2021, we that decision was made by the Commission. So today, any project can go ahead and publish themselves as an open source project without seeking those approvals. And that is one of the major achievements of the open source strategy. And we are seeing more and more projects coming onto code.europo.eu. The Open Source Program Office is also experimenting with labs. So we use Jitsi internally, HedgeDoc, CryptPad, Discourse. So we are trying out software because it's not enough to just talk about things. We need to also try them out. We adopted Mastodon, but that was at the Commission level also. So we not only tweet, but we toot. But this is a very interesting area because we are getting other parts of the Commission saying, we would like to try this. Can you set this up on a server for us? So that's good news, really. Okay, in terms of outreach, reaching out to the development community, I have to take you back to EU-FOSSA, the project that we did in EU-FOSSA 2. It was a preparatory action when I joined the Commission in 2018, December 2017. So that ran for about 3 years, and we did lots of hackathons. But this specific slide is for the OSPO itself, which was formed afterwards. So it doesn't include those figures. So even as the OSPO, we have organized 6 hackathons, and 2 of them are in collaboration with the United Nations, who were very interested in what we were doing on bug bounties and hackathons. And we've also carried out 13 bug bounty programs, more on that a little later. And we organized 2 conferences, one in November 2020 and one in which was called Open Source Beyond 2020. And recently, in December, we had on computing and sustainability. Both of those were organized with our European Commission department called Connect, which is a policy directorate general. Okay, and right now we are trying to, that bug bounty framework contract is over. It expires in 2023. So we are putting out a tender to get the next version of the framework contract for bug bounties. Communication. Well, we publish a lot of letters, articles in Digit Newsletter. Internally, we've been beating the drum about open source as the OSPO, and people know what open source is, but actually they don't. When we go and speak with them properly, they understand. They say, "Oh, I didn't realize that." So the knowledge of open source is increasing internally, which I think is very important. It has to be, ground up. It's already there in the IT division, Digit, but it's not so much in other parts of the Commission. So our presentations help with that. And we also publish everything, all the major studies we do, all the projects we do. We publish articles on Joiner, as we are very transparent with what we do. And we are continuously publishing on internal and external channels. And I mentioned tweeting and tooting of the OSPO-related activities. So one of the ways we do this communication is by having specific events. So we used to have what's called brown bag lunches, where people brought their own lunch, and we used to talk about open source across the digit. But now we have what's called an espresso. So it's open source talks over coffee, and there we invite a particular division, department, or even another European institution. For example, last time we had the European Council giving us an update on their open source strategy. So these formal events help us to communicate internally, and we do external communication anyway. Okay. So that is a brief update on the OSPO. So, I mean, the 10 actions are they keep us busy. And just to take you back to those actions. In fact, we are at the end of our strategy this year. So right now we are starting work to look at how do we update our OSPO's, European Commission's open source strategy. What will the new one look like? What emphasis shall it have? What do we maintain? What do we improve? What role can we play? So there will be a new open source strategy for the whole of the Commission, and obviously after some careful consideration this year. But many of these actions will continue. Okay, so now coming to cybersecurity. So we deal with cybersecurity via bug bounties and hackathons. So this is a slide that I won't explain in detail, but you can study it later. How we carry out bug bounties, and really it's through a bug bounty company who has a platform, and the platform has ethical hackers who are registered, and they find bugs, and they are triaged with the external software organization or internal European Commission project. Once a bug is validated, then, and if it's a genuine one, then a certain amount of money is passed on to those people. So pretty general, but it's good to see it in visual format. Okay, so I bring in EU-FOSSA, EU-FOSSA 2, which actually the framework contract was created for it in 2020. And so I think so far we've done 28 bug bounties, which is quite remarkable. 15 of those were done in 2020. And you can see the other figures there and the names of the organizations. And then being internal as well as external. This is the European blockchain project internally. And in summary, these are obviously the bounties are only paid when the bug found is substantial. So, high quality bugs. And you can see how cost effective it is in terms of, prizes and the number of bugs. So bug bounties are here to stay. We're getting a new framework contract, and the communities that we have done this for, they were very pleasantly surprised. They said, "You guys want to invest money on our software? Thank you very much." So And we did that, and here's some very enthusiastic feedback. It's pretty good. So we have some quotes from the EU-FOSSA time, where we found bugs in PuTTY and other places which had been hidden for 10, 15 years. Again, the bug finding was done by wonderful ethical hackers, very clever. And so it's been a very profound way of improving security on open source software, bug bounties. Now we come to hackathons. In EU-FOSSA, we did a lot of hackathons. So there were 3 individual events. They were all physical pre-COVID. And the first one had 2 hackathons. The next one had 6. They were all to do with Apache software foundation projects. And there were 6 projects there. And then the last one we did internal European Commission projects. So they were, as you can see, 17 hackathons. Now, in those days, most of the hackathons were focused on security because EU-FOSSA 2 was a cybersecurity project. But some of the hackathons we've done recently have not been only about security. For example, JITSI was about developing new features. But I will say that most of the emphasis is on security and tightening up things. On the right, you can see 2 bug bounties. This is OpenStreetMap and Moodle. They were done in combination, in collaboration with the United Nations. Very successful too. So we are, pretty much sold on hackathons and bug bounties. And you saw the internal hackathon we did to remove secrets. Okay. So that gives you an idea of the second initiative of how we manage security. Of course, we have our Digit S, which deals with, we have a security department. We have CERT EU, which catches, if you like, intrusion detection and various other things. So there is a very secure system. But this is about open source. How do we fund security for open source? And it's via these initiatives. Okay, now that brings me to the third portion of my presentation, which is a project called FOSSEPS. And FOSSEPS was really, it was born out of EU-FOSSA 2. We felt what we were doing, EU-FOSSA 2 was an internally focused project. And the 15 software you saw for bug bounties was software being used by the Commission itself. But we felt this feeling that we should take this to the European level. And this feeling is that European public services all across the member states, at all levels, local level, university level, regional level, national level, we should be cooperating on open source, because open source is a philosophy, and it's about sharing and pooling, sharing the benefits, of course, but also pooling resources. And we're not doing that enough. So FOSSEPS is FOSS for European Public Services. That's a wide remit, but we got some funding for what's called a pilot project. It was €500,000. So within that, we are dealing with 3 specific initiatives. The The first initiative is to identify Europe's most critical open source software. And by critical, what we mean is software that is in a critical state of health, like in ICU. But also it's software that is really important to the organization. Otherwise, we wouldn't care whether it was in a good state of health or not. So I haven't got the diagram where you have a little pin. If you remove that software, then the whole shape comes tumbling down. So that is what critical software is. It's upholding the organization. So we need to identify what that is, and we need to do it collectively. So that project was done. I'm going to show you a slide on that in a second. The second initiative is to build a European open source solutions catalog. So these are business solutions developed by European public administrations. And you will not be surprised that in all countries, we are developing the same solution again and again and again. Sometimes due to lack of knowledge that a solution has already been developed by a municipality somewhere else in the country. So national catalogs, regional catalogs are emerging, and it makes sense to reuse those. But imagine doing it on a European scale. So that's the vision for that. And again, I'm going to talk about that. The third initiative is to get the conversation going. How do European public services, how will they cooperate? So what's the formal structure that they will have? So we will do a little study on that, a little workshop, and we'll come up with some ideas of what people feel they need to do. Okay. First slide is about critical software. This is to do with one software called curl. And curl, the last line says, is used daily by virtually every internet using human on the globe. It's been installed in over 10 billion installations. But it's got a bus factor of 1 or 2, which means there's 1 maintainer or 2 maintainers. It's not a very pleasant thing. If they got under a bus, then they would vanish, right? But somehow this terminology has stuck. So you can see how important curl is for all of us. And you can see the contributions. Daniel Stenberg is the guy in blue, and then there are others. So probably 1 or 2 people are looking after the software, and they are so important, and the software is so important. So we can say that this software is in a critical state of health, and we need to find ways of making it non-critical, nursing it back to health. One of the ways of doing that is sometimes it's funding. They need more money. But sometimes it's not money related. It's to do with how attractive the software is to new people who are entering open source. So basically we need more contributors, more committers to such projects. And that would reduce the workload on existing maintainers and also make it healthy. So this is a very useful activity, and imagine doing this all across Europe. If, public institutions are not aware of the critical software they're using. I mean, it's actually quite a task to identify critical software. But once they're aware of it, there will be something we can do with as 28 member states to work together. So that is the thrust of the FOSS project, and it's very much about security of our open source, that our open source is safe and secure and will continue to exist. This is about longevity. This is the slide on the catalog. It's a dummy page of the home page, and here we have studied national catalogs from Italy and regional catalogs from France, Germany, and various others. And in fact, we studied 13 catalogs, some external as well from the EU. And we've got a project, and we are building it. We're building a pilot of it and a minimum viable product, which we hope we will achieve by the end of this year. So we will have a glimpse of how a European catalog looks like. And then the next project, which is the FOSS preparatory action, once that gets approved, we can go a little bit further and build a fuller catalog. And the idea here is, again, to avoid reuse, but you can just imagine the challenges, because each country has its own language. So the French software is obviously coded. The comments are in French. But what we do know is that the tremendous benefits that have been achieved by regional catalogs and national catalogs, they far outweigh the cost of the catalog, even to run it, to maintain it. So if this catalog one day becomes very richly populated with software developed, not of the solutions, business applications or business solutions developed by public administrations, and they are parameterized and they are able to be used all across the EU. And we are talking about possibly savings of hundreds of millions of euros, which is remarkable. And that's the power of the open source philosophy of sharing and reusing. And that's already happening at the software level, but it's not happening at the applications level. And this is the solutions level. So this is the thrust behind the EU solutions catalog. Of course, we have to figure out, where do we get the data from? Who is responsible for it? We don't want to create a centralized monolith, a big, centralized system. So we want it federated, so it can run. The responsibilities are federated. So there's a lot of thought going into this. So this is the slide, the last slide, and I thank you. I hope you have a better understanding of A, the OSPO, and B, what we do in terms of security, and also and the FOSS project. I will hand you back to Isabel, and then I'll take some questions. Thank you.
Thank you for this very interesting presentation. We do have a few questions indeed in our chat, and I would like to invite everyone else to share their questions. I'll proxy them through to Saranjit.
Sure.
There's one question from Alex from the FSFE asking, I believe that was related to your InnoSource initiative, what the reasons are for not going directly to open source. You mentioned that in order to go for InnoSource, you first had to remove all of the secrets. I assume that's passwords, keys, etc. So he's wondering what else is in there that stops you.
Okay, the answer is very simple. That depends on the project themselves. We encourage projects to go open source. So it may very well be that they will go open source. But I think the general thrust, Alex, is people will be going open source, right? That's why we removed the barrier. But it may be that we go inner source first and then do it. Go ahead. Yeah.
You mentioned that you were about to remove several legal barriers.
Yes.
That stopped you from going to open source. Alina Marefa asked whether that's IP related or what other barriers there may be.
That's a good question, Alina. So I think it was complicated in such a way. The way, for example, is to do with IP. You're right, but it's also the way the European European Commission's framework contracts were, that we would engage a third party, a software development organization, say Trusys or Atos or PwC or whoever, whichever one. So we are contracting them to develop something for us, right? And there was copyright, right? Now, we would want that copyright because they develop for us if it's custom built. Now, when you are using an open source software, you can't have that copyright because it's open source. So it was all, very complicated. And we wanted to use open source more and more and more. And in the end, it became, you have a system that's developed with several open source components. Certain bits were proprietary because you wanted to keep the code, or the contractor who we hired said, that's our code. So all that had to be unpacked and studied properly, legally, before we could give permission to what could be open source. So those were some of the things that used to go on. But now we have a much cleaner system. So each project decides, and obviously these issues still need to be looked at, right? It's not that, you can just violate IP agreements, but the decision is, once you've done the checks and balances properly and the legalities are correct, go ahead and publish. Thank you, Elena. Isabel, shall I read the last one? Hackathons?
There's two more.
Yeah, go for it. Not the last two, yeah. Were these hackathons following a systematic approach? Okay, scientifically guided structure. Right. I am not aware personally of a scientific approach. So they were systematic in a certain way. Forgive me, but I don't think we're following a specific structure, a scientifically guided one. But the results have been published. Yes, all the ones we've done recently have been published. The internal hackathons in EU-FOSSA 2 remained internal, but yes, all the others were open source software organizations. They published what they did, what was achieved, what features were developed, and so on. It was all very, very open. The approach was, okay, let's have a clear objective. What are we going to achieve in this hackathon, right? So, is it to develop new features? Is it to do some documentation? Is it to find bugs and secure it? Or, what? So that objective has to be agreed very clearly up front. Then we have teams or approaches to say, okay, we're going to put forth, say it's feature development. Team 1 says that we're going to develop this feature, that feature. Team 2, Team 3, Team 5, Team 7. So then they all say what they're going to do. Then we have midway checkpoints, mentoring, then they all make a presentation. So it's pretty systematic, but I don't know whether we could call it scientific. So I hope that helps. Right. So Thomas is asking about that, about the Sovereign Tech Fund supporting curl. Great. Do we have an overview of who is supporting which projects by which funds? Not that I'm aware of, Thomas. And this is what's needed. Thank you very much for that question. We do need visibility. And again, the EU FOSS project, when the third action is to say, how do we cooperate? Where do we publish it? Do we have a list of needs? Do we have a list of problems? How are we going to manage this cooperation? Who's got the time? You know, the Commission can provide the Secretariat for, say, a year. We don't mind starting it off. I would be delighted, in fact. But it really needs to become self-managed, self-funded. And, you know, we're looking forward to your input on that as well. So we look forward to, you know, we do need something like that. Otherwise, we keep talking about the issue. I'm very aware of the critical software issue. We keep talking about it. We keep doing studies. But which specific projects are being helped by which funds? So we're getting down to that now. And the Software Tech Fund is helping curl, which is remarkable. Could you elaborate on the local benefits of the catalogs? Yes, of course. There is a catalog in France, which basically lists software developed by regional public administrations. And that all the regions in France, they look at that catalog. So they are reusing what's developed by others. That's been huge, a saving there. Okay. And that's a regional answer, a local answer. Okay. Now, if we look at a national level, the Italian catalog is very rich with software. And one of the reasons for its richness is that Italy passed a law mandating that every business application developed in open source by public administrations must be in that catalog. So as part of their legal obligations, they fill in a form to say, this is a software, this is what it does, you know, this is where the Git is, the URL, and some other metadata related stuff, and press enter, and that generates a public code .yaml record, which they then put onto their Git repository. And the Italian catalog crawls every night and picks up that record, public code.yaml record, and they get all that data, and now the entry is in the Italian catalog. And I was asking Fabio, who's and some of the other people who are running the catalog or developed the catalog. I mean, they couldn't give me specific figures, but they said that we are talking about millions of euros worth of savings, of reuse. And we're talking about hundreds of times software has been reused, which is music to hear that. Now, when you reuse software, you don't have to use it fully. You could enhance it. You could use 50, 70% of it, all of that. So that's been a great success story. And I'm sure there's success in all the catalogs. Otherwise, they would go into disuse. Yeah, Isabel?
So there's one more question.
Gregor has asked, can you elaborate on local benefits?
You had Gregor. There's Alina asking again. She didn't hear if the study identifying critical EU software within the FOSS project is finished.
Right.
Or if there's at least some version.
Yeah, so Alina, this is already published. It was done last year. It's on JoinUp. So if you just search for FOSSEPS, critical software, you'll find it. Otherwise, I will be happy to send you the link. Yeah, I would really encourage you to look at that.
So at least Alina is very happy about that. Gregor is asking if there are things you would want Germany to do, or, for instance, Open Code to do.
Okay, I would say on a general level, I would encourage all member states to have catalogs, a national catalog. Now, we were having this debate earlier. For example, if we have a space program, we don't need 28 space programs, national level. We need a European one, right? It's great. It makes sense. So why not do this for software? Why have national catalogs? Why not have one European catalog? Well, one of the reasons is that it won't work. We need that national level of, there's too much responsibility centrally. So the Italian catalog or the EU catalog will benefit from the Italian catalog because Italy already has got a national catalog. There was a law passed. So we need national level, regional level activity to encourage public administrations to, register their entries. Obviously, we will allow, not all countries have national catalogs. So if a region in a country that doesn't have a national catalog, they want to publish what they've done, they can put it straight into the European one. There's no problem with that. But we want to federate the responsibility at all levels so that some cataloging is happening, that there is a debate about cataloging, debate about reuse. My personal desire is that all procurement departments should say, why do you want new software? First, prove to me that this doesn't already exist, right? If it doesn't exist, fine, you can build it. But why don't you check first? That's not happening, right? It's our money, so we should check it. We should go somewhere and check it, but where do we go? So that's where the catalogs are coming in.
There's one more question from Gregor related to reaching out. You've talked a lot about reaching out to governments, but coming from an open source community, how do you reach out to those communities? Like, do you participate in FOSS? I know you are in touch with the Apache Software Foundation. What else is going on?
No. We participate in FOSS. First of all, we're talking very much about the OSPO. Let's just talk about the European Commission's open source community. It's huge. The OSPO's got 4 members, and we think we're doing quite a lot of work for 4 people. Actually, I am in the projects area, so literally 3 people. We have, say, our Drupal team. There's about 50 or 60 Drupal developers, and I'm sure I got that number wrong, probably more. So there are literally hundreds of open source people working in open source projects within the Commission. They all contribute. Not all of them. I mean, the vast majority of them will be contributing to open source. We, as the OSPO, we reach out to several communities. We've been doing bug bounties, hackathons. We are very much, we'd like to champion where we can the smaller communities. In the critical software area, and we also did a study last year on a European funding mechanism. So it's the little guys and the maintainers. 2 areas, the little guys and the maintainers, right? Because the individual software developers, open source guys came to us and said, I just need a tiny amount of money. Where do I get it from? So we did a study on funding open source, reviewed a lot of funding mechanisms that existed. So that report is out there waiting for some next step actions, which will happen. But please study that. It's called the European Funding Mechanism. I'll again be happy to send you the link. And then we have the maintainers, and basically that's where the critical software is. So those two. So we reach out. We go to conferences. Not only FOSDEM, the Linux Foundation, Apache Foundation, Drupal Foundation. We go to several conferences. We go to Paris, almost every year, the Open Source Conference. So there's a conference calendar. We talk to small micro communities. We talk to the big ones. We have an OSPO network. It's not only governments that we talk to. Okay.
There's one more interesting question over there. Where do you run and store your open source software that you create from your OSPO? Is that on dedicated server units?
Okay, so good point. So, Lars, the OSPO itself, being a small organization of 4 people, we don't create our own software. The development units are doing that all the time. And we use our data centers, the European Commission data center. So for example, the labs I mentioned, so Jitsi has to be installed somewhere, or Big Blue Button and HedgeDoc and others. So we install them on our own data centers, and then we get given a URL and we then use it. So that's the answer. Where can we find this study? I will send you a link, and I'll send you a link of all of these things we talked about: the European funding mechanism, the critical software, and EU-FOSSA. I'll send you all the links. You can look at them.
There's one question related again to the BugBounty programs that you've been running. Would you say that that's successful? And for you and for that program, what counts as success?
Okay, that's a very good question. So, if the BugBounty program ends up finding critical showstopper bugs, it's incredibly successful, because that vulnerability was waiting to be exploited, right? And it's not always possible to find that. Some software is excellent, and there wasn't a vulnerability of that nature. So we have critical, high bugs, medium bugs, and low bugs. Obviously, the BugBounty prize for finding an exceptional or a critical software is very high. So, the ethical hackers decide what they look at. So yes, we think the money is very well spent if we are able to find a lot of bugs. Okay. You could also argue that if software is already very secure, then you won't find many bugs. Fine. So we do a round robin. We try and spread the net of our BugBounty program. We did a BugBounty work for Drupal. Forgive me. If it's front-end software, user interface, you're going to find lots of bugs. But if you looked at the mix of software we BugBountied, some of them are libraries, very difficult libraries. So Putty, we found a bug that was there for 20 years. Very successful. So each software has its own success criteria. Also, the communities we work with, some of them are very happy to have us give them money to say, let's test your software. And not only the money, we arranged the program for them. But the very small ones recently said to us, hey guys, thanks for the money, but we don't have the people to evaluate all these bugs that may come out. So we are now trying to address that in the new framework contract. I don't know what the final outcome will be, but we're doing our best. We listen to the bug bounty programs and have a review at the end of each one. Did you find it useful? What could we do better? What could you do better? How was the bug bounty provider, the platform? Did you get on with each other? Did you have a disagreement? They felt it was critical, but you felt it was like this. I mean, the worst thing a hacker, for a hacker, is to say, we already knew about that bug. They found that bug. You already knew about it. You wasted my time. I spent all the effort. I still want my money. So there are issues of that nature. So we have to deal with that. And that's why we kind of encourage a responsible disclosure as well. So all the known bugs are already there, so they don't have to be refound. So there are some intimate challenges in each of these things that I mentioned. Very, very interesting.
So you talked a lot about bug bounties and how that's backed by people checking software. Thomas asks whether there are any plans to enable projects systematically while using static or dynamically application security testing, because, you know, commercial tools normally are very expensive.
That's a good question. Look, we've had presentations from Scan OSS and others. You know, we need a mixture of things. It's really up to the software community, you know, how they manage their security. Now, if you look at this pooling of resources, if we have a central list of which software has been bug bountied, and we won't choose that one that's just had it 6 months ago. That would be a waste of money. That's why a European picture is needed. We could also reuse tools. We could look at licenses and things. So dynamic testing, software tools against known vulnerabilities, this is all needed. During the critical study, it emerged that one of the solutions is to identify all the software that we're using, i.e. to create a software bill of materials, right? We already know that's one of the recommendations of the Log4j incident. The White House has said, you know, let's come up with a software bill of materials. Let's know what we're using. It's not so easy to do that, to have a proper one. Even if you created one, what do I do with it? It's got 20,000 software items. Okay, I have a bill of materials now, but am I any wiser? Which one is actually possibly going to fail? Which one is critical software? So there's an ongoing debate about that. I really think we need to pool our resources. Today's session is one of those where we are talking to all of you, lovely people, and sharing our genuine initiatives and concerns. So, you know, we talked with the Sovereign Tech Fund, Adriana, and so we've talked about that in the past, Fiona. So we need to talk more. We need to talk more on the European level. We need to cooperate. So, and you'll be surprised, although these things are expensive, if we shared the burden of the finance as well and the knowledge, you know, in a structured way, it's affordable, because the cost of not doing it is massive. When something fails, cost is huge. So this is preventative, and cybersecurity is going to get worse as we move more and more towards digital. Security is going to become important. So it just becomes a very intelligent way of doing things, by pooling, by sharing, and I'm sure we could avoid some disasters. And of course, reusing software. Are there bug bounty programs for EU operating systems? Okay, well, I mean, there are bug bounty programs. I mean, we are a public institution, right? So we have the same financial constraints that we all do, you know, others do too. There's never enough money, right? Some of the programs were for our own security, right? EU-FOSSA was for our own security. So the parliament paid for that. They said that the heartbleed bug caused a lot of damage, right? 500 million in damage. So they raised $1 million or 2 million to say, let's use that money to check the European institutions, European Commission's systems. And that's where we found all these bugs. So I think there will be probably a trickle of money in every organization. I think the answer isn't pooling it. I really think so. So yeah, I think there is money for bug bounties all over the place, and you know, very good for the Sovereign Tech Fund, for the German government to put that money. I think there is money available for sure, publicly, and institutions all across Europe. Whether it's being pooled, it's not at the moment. But even if it's not being pooled, as long as we know what the Sovereign Tech Fund is doing, that knowledge can be pooled. So we are aware that they've done that. They've looked after curl. So curl is good. Let's look at the next critical software and see what we can do. So it's that knowledge pooling, and the resource pooling can happen afterwards.
So there's one more question. Is there already cooperation, or do you already have contacts with the Open SSF?
We have contacts. We have contacts. We speak with them. And the, you know, Linux is a very rich system. They have a lot of money. So, but they also operate in Europe. So yeah, it's great. Is there cooperation? Well, there is verbal cooperation. We haven't participated in any joint programs yet. So that's the answer to that. But yes, we do speak with them. Any more questions?
I would wait another minute to see if anyone else wants to type. Other than that, I would like to say thank you already for your presentation, but especially for your time answering all of these questions. It's been a pleasure having you. Look, Thomas is writing.
No, it's really, it's an absolute pleasure. We love it.
I would like to hand it over to Lars then to wrap up the session tonight.
Pleasure.
Yeah, so thanks to Saranjit for your excellent talk within our dialogue, this screen dialogue format, and within the so-called BuntesBugBounty workstream. And yeah, as BSI, we want to keep track with our Dialogue for Cybersecurity project. We want to keeping the exchange with the civil society and our stakeholder groups on the cybersecurity issues, and to build a permanent and reliable channel into the BSI and also out to the society. Or as you framed it, Saranjit, get the conversation going. So we are very proud about your feedback and your participation. Please stay in touch. Please stay informed via our project website. It's named in German dialog-cyber-sicherheit.de. And so thank you very much on behalf of the Federal Office for Information Security. And with that, I'm passing on Gregor for his role as workstream speaker for his final note. Thank you.
Thank you, Lars. Thank you very much. On behalf of the European Commission, I'm very grateful for the invitation and also a chance for us to openly share what we're doing and to excite some debate. It's always a pleasure, seriously. We love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well then, thank you for spending the time with us, and also thanks for EU-FOSSA, which always helped when it came to arguing why there can be state ways to fund fixing open source software, and I'll hope to see you another time.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Thanks for everybody spending a Tuesday night with us.
Yeah.
Thanks to everybody for spending a Tuesday night with us. I'm sure that all of you have other things that are also interesting to do, and we'll get to them now. And I'm happy to have. We're all happy to have had you. Thank you.
Thanks to all the participants as well.
Have a nice evening. Bye bye.
Make it happen. Bye.